Did you know that tomato vines can grow up to 20 feet, 40, maybe even 60 feet? Yeah, that's right. In fact, the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest tomato vine is, guess what, 65 feet. And I want you to guess in the comments what tomato variety grew that long a vine. I'll give you a hint. It's a pretty common variety and also very popular with gardeners. So I'll let you know in the middle of the video, but I want to see what you can guess. But today we are going to be talking about trellising these tomato plants so that we can get those monstrous vines. So tomatoes are vining crops, and left to their defenses, they will produce long vines, not unlike this cantaloupe plant here or pumpkins or even sweet potatoes. But we gardeners like to confine them to these tomato cages and make them grow vertically, and that way we are potentially actually limiting our harvest. So I did a little bit of research into how commercial growers grow tomatoes, and they use what's called the lower and lean method. And it is actually surprisingly adaptable to not just the home garden, but to the small space home garden. So I hope by the end of this video, I am going to be able to convince you to trade at least 2 or 3 plants that are currently growing in cages like this to try this very fascinating method of growing tomatoes. Hey folks, if we haven't met before, my name is Tara. I garden in the California Bay Area, and here on the channel my goal is not just to help you grow but also to love the process of growing, and part of that is all the learning that comes from trying new methods, which I'm going to be showing you today because this is the first time I'm going to be using this method, and I'm so excited about it because a lot of gardeners that I really truly respect use this as their primary method to trellis tomatoes, and I'm like, why have I not tried it before? By the way, speaking of tomatoes, if you are one of my green stock followers, are you as excited as I am about the tomato color and the sage color green stalks that are coming out soon? That's a different video, but today we are going to be talking all about this new trellising method. But before I do that, they say if you get 10 gardeners in a room and ask them about their favorite trellising method, you'll get 12 different answers. So let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite trellising method? Are you a tomato cage kind of person? Are you a Florida weave kind of person? Are you a cattle panel kind of person? I've tried so many methods, and this one has gotten me the most excited so far. So let's go do it. So we're back at my squirrel-proof enclosure, which is where I'm growing most of my tomatoes this year. I recently published a video about all the things that I've tried to keep squirrels away from a lot of my plants, and finally what succeeded. But what's important is all the comments where people share the different ways that they have used to keep their garden protected from squirrels. It's a literal Wikipedia of all kinds of methods to keep squirrels out. So I highly recommend that you check out that video. I'll put a link to it somewhere over here or here, don't know. So in this video, we're going to talk about 3 things. First, let's talk about the method and why it works and why commercial growers use it. Then let's get into what types of tomatoes are really the right candidates for this method, because not all of them are. And then finally, let's talk about what to expect from an ongoing maintenance perspective and whether you're up to it, because there is some. So this is my lower and lean trellis. But first, let's talk about the tomatoes. So there's 2 basic types of tomatoes. There's the determinate varieties and there is the indeterminate varieties. Now, the determinate varieties of tomatoes usually grow to a certain height, maybe 3, 4, 5 feet. They produce all of their tomatoes within a short period of time, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then they're pretty much done. And then there's the indeterminate tomato variety. Now, this is the one that produces vines that grow and grow and grow until your first frost. So in my California warm climate, my Bay Area climate, I have a growing season that lasts all the way through definitely end of November, sometimes maybe early December. And until that time, the tomatoes keep growing and technically can keep producing a good harvest if you do something right. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is how to set this up and how to make sure that you're getting those harvests. Because at the end of the day, we're not looking for a world record for the longest tomato vine. We are looking for the most harvests that we can possibly get. And speaking of the most harvests, one of the nice things about doing a method for the first time is you kind of get into the rabbit hole of research. And I've done a ton of research on this method. It's all fresh in my mind. But I also went into the rabbit holes of Guinness Book of World Records for this, that, and the other. And we talked about the longest vine, but there's some others. So apparently there's this tree called the octopus tomato tree in Disney's Epcot Center. And it actually produced 32,000 tomatoes. Can you believe that? And then there's another guy that actually produced over 1,200 tomatoes on a single stem. So yeah, I mean, my point is it's possible to get lots and lots of tomato harvests from a single plant, but you have to do certain things to make sure that the plant stays healthy and it got the right amount of nutrients going to the right places in the plant. All of that is calculated into this trellising method. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Let me show you the setup first and how exactly it works. So the concept behind this method is actually really simple. You've got your tomato plant and you've got a string. And this tomato plant is going to be growing up the string. And as it grows, you're going to keep clipping the vine that is growing to the string, and when it reaches the top
kind of
here,
horizontal
you
post,
are
and on
going
that
to
post
release
is this hook,
more
and on this
string.
hook is...
And guess what happens to the tomato plant now that it's got all the slack? It kind of leans downward and starts to lay on the ground. And the more it grows, the more string you release, and the further it keeps laying on the ground. So technically, you can keep laying it on the ground and you can go on forever and ever. I mean, there's 35 feet of string in this hook over here. So yeah, I can actually grow this vine to whatever length I choose to, as long as I've got enough string. But there are a few things that you need to do to keep the plant healthy as well as producing. So let's bring you up closer to show you the tomato plant. Okay, so we've got this nice healthy tomato plant, and at the base of it you can see that I have got the string attached. Now I've tied it to an old bed frame, but you can use a long piece of wood, something to anchor the string onto. And then what you do is, as the tomato grows, you start to attach its stem to the string. And you can either wind it around like I've done over here, or even better, you can purchase these little clips very cheap on Amazon or wherever your favorite online store is. So all you're going to do is you're going to fit the string at the back over here onto this angle in the clip, and then you grab the tomato stem and you push it in here, and there you go. Now, as you follow the string further up the stem, you come to the next point where you want to clip it on. Now, you want to clip it right under a leaf. You do not want to clip it under a flower producing branch, because it puts a little bit of pressure underneath it. So again, just grab the string. I've been winding it, but technically you should be using this, and then you clip it on just like that. Now, one thing about this method is you really want to concentrate the plant on producing and ripening those harvests, which means that it should not be wasting any energy at all doing anything else. And one of the big things that plants waste energy on, actually two things, is leaf production and sucker production. So you got to remove all the ones that are not meeting your goals. Let me show you exactly which ones you take out. So if you look along the stem and you look to see where the first branch that is producing flowers is, this is where all the energy needs to go, which means that everything else underneath it needs to be removed. Case in point, this little guy over here. This is a sucker, and left to its own means and defenses, it's going to grow into a whole tomato plant. And that's just the nature of the vining plant, because when it lies down, it will form roots where it touches the soil, And this one is going to have its own little set of roots and grow into a whole new plant, albeit attached to the mother plant. But you want to take this out because this is going to suck an immense amount of energy out of it. Now, I've been very good about removing leaves as well, but you'll notice that I've got another sucker over here. This is my flower branch right here. I've got another sucker that I've let grow. I'm actually going to do 2 stems, and the reason I'm doing 2 stems is because a hot California climate, we do need a little bit more leaves, and this is my first time. So I don't want to take a chance on just 1 stem, so I'm doing 2 leaders, as they are called. But I'm going to remove everything under the flowers from now onward as the plant continues to grow. So of course you've got to be doing all the things that you normally would do for your tomato plants. In addition to that pruning that I just showed you, you're going to have to feed it, you're going to have to make sure that it gets enough water, and you've got to really make sure that you're pruning off those leaves, especially the ones that are closer to the ground, because they can also be the first ones to bring diseases into the plants. Now, as the plant continues to grow upward, the new leaves that form, they're doing most of the work. The older leaves at the bottom, their work starts to decrease and they become older and more prone to diseases. So they've got to go. And as that nice clean stem under the flower is starting to appear and get longer and longer, because as the flowers turn to fruit and as the fruit ripen, you're going to be harvesting the fruit and then you're going to have to move on to the next one. And in the meanwhile, you'll be pruning off everything below what you are harvesting. So you're only going to have the latest harvest that you need to do and upward from that point on. So you'll notice that the stem is getting longer and longer, that cleared out stem. And that is the one that is going to be leaning on the ground. So when you unhook this to lean it, when the plant reaches the top over here, you will also have to move it a little bit because the stem that is lying down is occupying some horizontal space. All right, let's see whether you got the answer right for the longest tomato vine, what variety of tomato it was. Did you guess sun gold? Because if you did, you are right. So let's talk about why commercial growers actually use this method and why it makes sense to them, and actually how they do it a little bit differently than the backyard grower. But I'll also talk about why it kind of makes sense for the backyard grower, especially if you've got a smaller space. And I also want to show you how I have set up the trellis. I've not done it ideally over here. I've got it actually better in another place, which I think will make more sense for you. So I'll show that to you. Yeah, so a lot of commercial growers actually grow tomatoes aquaponically or hydroponically. And they do it mainly because it's very, first off, tomatoes grow amazingly in hydroponic situations. I've actually grown it that way, and oh my goodness. You can also control the nutrients very, very precisely in a hydroponic system, and it occupies a lot less space. There's actually, if you go to Bootstrap Farmer, they've got what's called a Dutch bucket, and that is, it's the best of both worlds. It's got the hydroponic setup underneath it, and it's got soil as well on the top. So that actually is a very interesting way that I might try sometime to grow tomatoes. But I have actually grown tomatoes mostly in water, and oh my goodness, I could not believe how well they grew with the nutrients that I added into the water. You can actually get hydroponic specific nutrients that are perfectly balanced for all the things. But that's a whole different video. I actually made one a while ago, so I will put a link to that in case you are interested to see how I did that. But yeah, hydroponics, giving a plant access to water and nutrients makes it grow enormously well and produce enormously well. And that's how commercial growers like to grow it. You hear about hothouse tomatoes. They grow it actually in hoop houses also in a very, very controlled environment. But for us backyard gardeners, it actually is also hugely beneficial to do because you don't need to have a hoop house or hydroponic system. But one of the nice things about it is you can actually pack these tomato plants really, really close together. So I've got mine about a foot apart. Usually I keep them about 18 inches apart. But because I'm trimming off all of the leaves from the stem and all of those suckers, and I'm primarily growing 1 or 2 leaders, it occupies a lot less space, and so it can be compacted a lot more closely together. Plus, it's a very clean system. You don't have these tomato plants doing all, you know how these tomato plants grow through the season. I mean, they just get out of control. And then the sad part of it is that the entire plant is not thriving if it's not getting everything that it needs. This way, you can control not just the amount of nutrients and water that are getting to the plant, you can also keep it relatively disease-free because it's those bottom leaves that are closer to the soil that are getting, that are the carriers for disease, if you will. So I think it is actually a great way to grow a lot of tomato plants in a small space. Now, would I grow cherry tomatoes? I know Sun Gold was the longest vine thing, but would I grow cherry tomatoes? No, I don't think I would, because cherry tomatoes, you want to get lots of vines and they produce their fruit and ripen their fruit very quickly. And the more vines each plant has, the more cherry tomatoes you get, right? But I would grow, the medium-sized tomatoes. I wouldn't grow the very heavy tomatoes either, like the heavy beefsteak tomatoes, 1+ pound tomatoes. Those are a little too big for this method. I mean, you've only got one stem, and with a load of tomatoes on it, that single string may not be able to hold that kind of weight. So you want to go for more medium-sized but indeterminate tomatoes. So I told you I'll show you exactly how I did the trellis setup, and then we'll talk about some of the gotchas, if you will, and what you may need to be signing up for in case you choose to do this method. So anyway, this is the trellis. Actually, let me turn you around and show you. So I've got these T-posts. Now, these T-posts are, I think they're 6 feet tall. You can go, actually, this is relatively short. I would go even higher. And then at the top of it, you've got this fitting, this coupling, this T coupling. I'll put the list of all these parts in the description so you know what I've used. And then to hold up the tomatoes, I'm using this metal electrical conduit. I actually had this lying around in my house. And you don't want to use something like I've used over here. This is a PVC pipe. You will see that it's bending. It's already bending, and the tomato plants are like babies. It's just bending from the weight of the hook. So I'm going to be replacing this with this metal conduit. So you want to get whatever length your raised beds are, get it to that size. You might have to cut the ones that you get by default at the big box store. And then, yeah, you just hang these up on it. And if you're going to do 2 liters, you will need 2 of these hooks per plant. Now, I am using these types of hooks. I hear that the ones that come in a reel are better. I've not tried those, but hey, I'm new and I got these, and then I read that the other is better. So I'm actually going to be getting the other as well. It comes in like a thread reel, and maybe it's just easier to unwind. I'm not really sure, but I'll try that out as well and let you know which one I prefer. But it seems like that one is the one that a lot of my favorite YouTubers prefer. And then going down over here, I've got this old bed frame that I have tied each string onto. You want something to anchor it onto. Some people actually bury the string in the ground under the tomato plant. You can do that as well. I've actually tied it because I feel that it just holds tighter, and I won't pull it out by accident. And don't be fooled by all these plants. A lot of them are in containers waiting in the wings to go in my garden somewhere. The actual distance between the tomato plants is from here to here. So that's about a foot. I've seen people go even closer. I've seen them go like 8 inches. But since I'm doing 2 liters, I felt I'd keep them about a foot apart. Okay, so before we crown this the greatest tomato trellising method ever invented, there are a couple of gotchas that actually may make you decide that this is not the right method for you. So let's talk about them. So first off, this is a lot of pruning. You've got to come every day, literally. That's how fast the tomato plants are growing, especially this time of year, late spring, early summer. They're growing super fast. And those leaves and those suckers are just shooting out, and you have got to stay on top of removing them. And then secondly, and also along the lines of maintenance, this is not something that you can decide to take even 1 week vacation and go away, let alone 2 or more weeks vacation, because when you come back, the plant is going to be out of control. And if you cut those suckers after they've reached a really large size, that really affects the plant. It will struggle. It does not like large suckers to be taken away from it. It will recover, but it will take a while, and it will take a toll on the plant's overall health, at least for a while. So yeah, before you decide to do this method, make sure that you're up to all of that upfront work. The good news, though, is that this rapid growth, this rapid sucker production only happens during the first 4, 6, 8 weeks of the tomato plant's life. After that, it starts getting actively into flowering mode and producing fruits and doesn't produce as many suckers. It will still continue to produce those leaves, and you do have to take those off, but the suckers are the ones that really, they really take the life out of the tomato plant. And if you cut away large suckers, the plant takes a little bit of time to recover from that. So yeah, you got to stay on top of the suckers at the very least. I actually brought you on this side of my house to talk about 2 other benefits of the system, because I actually want to demonstrate a stupid thing that I did that I actually love to make the point. Let me show you my beautiful kitchen garden, elevated garden from Vego Garden, where I'm growing a million things. So I set up this elevated planter on wheels about 7 weeks ago, and that's when I planted all these teeny tiny little plants that have grown into literal monsters. This bed is 10 feet long and 2.5 feet wide. So it's a pretty large bed, but I am cramming a whole bunch of things in it. I don't know how advisable it is, but yeah, one of the benefits of the lower and lean system is that it keeps the airflow going. I'm going to have to work extra hard over here because I've got so many plants, and even though I am actively pruning, I've got this one on 2 liters as well. There's still a lot of plants over here, and I've got to make sure that everyone is getting sufficient light and everyone is getting sufficient airflow. And then the other thing about the low and lean system, like I said, for the indeterminate tomatoes, you can grow it as tall as you can. The tomato cages are great, but they do end, right? Like this over here has ended. So what do I do after it ends? Fortunately, the Vego Garden Flex Grow tomato cage that I'm using here is one that you can stack over and over, however many you want. But yeah, still, how tall do you want the plant to get vertically, right? So I would not use tomato cages for any plant that I'm planning to grow more than, say, 5 feet or so. In fact, I love growing these dwarf tomato plants. They grow only about 4 feet tall max, and then they produce large-sized tomatoes, not cherry tomatoes. They are dwarf tomato plants, but they produce large tomatoes on small-sized plants. And these tomato cages are just perfect for those. And I love that you can increase the height as well if your plant grows a little bit taller, because it's just being a little bit happier. All right, so some of the things that I'm going to be looking for in this method. Speaking of looking for, I just noticed that I've got strawberries that I need to harvest from my green stock. But since this is really my first season using this method, I am going to be watching, is it really easier to manage the plants using this method? Are the plants actually going to stay healthier? Because I do know that mid-season, I get blight and fusarium wilt and all kinds of stuff. Are my harvests going to improve? Am I going to get a lot more harvest? Or is it going to be a wash? Is the maintenance going to be getting annoying, especially midsummer? It gets super hot over here. Is it going to be heavy maintenance? I want to know how much it's going to take out of me to maintain these plants. And then perhaps the biggest question of them all is, am I still going to be excited when the plant reaches over 10 feet tall, as I am right now when they're looking so beautiful and green and cute and pretty? Because once they reach that length and I'm lowering them and I'm leaning them, is the method going to get a little bit out of hand? I don't know. I'm going to find out all these things. So let me know in the comments, are you going to try this method on at least one tomato plant, please? Pretty please? Let me know. And if you are interested in growing more things vertically, I do actually highly recommend the Greenstock Vertical Planter. I am a Greenstock affiliate. I've got a ton of content videos on how to grow things in the Greenstock, and I will put a link to it in case you're interested. Until next time, live green and love your greens.